The Florida Gators are starting to pack up that 2026 recruiting class, adding 2 players on Sunday night.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free, whether it's in the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Monday. I am Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel.com. And the Florida Gators added 2 players to their 2026 recruiting class yesterday. Big news. We're going to go in order of when they committed. So Chancellor Campbell is who we're going to talk about first. Offensive tackle out of St. Pete. 6'8", 310 pounds, and 310 pounds is fine. Needs to trim a little bit of the fat, convert it to muscle, which always going to be a thing with a high school player stepping onto a college campus. That's always going to change. Weight, like the strength and conditioning program is going to change his weight. It's going to change his frame, and probably for the better. He is a 3-star on every single we'll say platform. On 3, he's a 3-star. He's the 33rd offensive tackle in the country. On 24/7, he's a 3-star. He's the 37th offensive tackle in the country. On ESPN, he's a 3-star. That's the 46th offensive tackle in the country. And on Rivals, 3-star. That is the 65th offensive tackle in the country. And I mean, and you look at the film, and we will talk about this. Again, I don't know if we're going to do it Tuesday or Wednesday, but we'll do our scouting report for the next 3 commits, because of course last week we did the first 3 commits. This week we'll do the next 3 commits, and hopefully we'll get to continue doing more of those scouting reports. Could be fun. Just gonna say, maybe this week we'll have some live shows. Who knows what's gonna happen? Who's to say? Not me. But Chancellor Campbell is someone who's just a giant human being that can just pummel people, right? And that fits with what Rob Sale has been recruiting, what Jonathan DeCoster has been recruiting, what the Florida Gators have been recruiting on the offensive line, is just these guys that can go out and have the things you can't teach. And honestly, I said on the offensive line, but really at every position, Florida has prioritized getting the guys who can do things you can't teach. You can't teach height. You can't teach length. You can't teach speed. You can't teach so many of these things that, let's even quarterback. We talked about it with Will Griffin. He's great going off platform, off script, figuring things out. DJ Lagway in high school was great doing that. That was evident all over the film. That's stuff you can't teach. Like guys can learn it, but you can't be taught it. And for Chancellor Campbell, he's got the size, the length, the athletic traits that teams are looking for, that teams are prioritizing, and people can talk about the 3-star ranking all they want. If you're going to bring up the 3-star ranking, just know the only thing that you are accomplishing is establishing the fact that you don't know football. Because the other teams that were recruiting Chancellor Campbell, this wasn't, USF, San Jose State. This wasn't that. This was Chancellor Campbell being recruited by Florida, Miami, Georgia, having official visits set for Penn State and Ohio State. He's a dude, right? And Florida has been the heavy lean for him for a long time. Again, St. Pete is going to be a region that Florida is recruiting well, or is going to have success recruiting. And if they're not having success recruiting, then we're having a problem there. But Chancellor Campbell, now the 2nd offensive line commit for the Florida Gators in the 2026 class, and kind of taking the heat off of Rob Sale look, I'm not saying anything about, recruiting elite football players throughout. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that just quantity was also an issue for this offensive line recruiting for a couple years. And now you got 2 guys early on. We say early on. It's June. We're at the point now where, just with how crazy recruiting gets between July and December, June's early. All right, that's what we're doing now. But now with Chancellor Campbell and Janari Carr, adding two people who just like punching people in the face repeatedly. That's basically what they're doing on the offensive line, is just getting guys that can manhandle people. They're getting nasty players who are physical, athletic, and can get the job done. And again, we're looking at guys that have the things you can't teach. Florida's doing a hell of a job building there. Florida's doing a hell of a job recruiting there. And Chancellor Campbell, a guy that Florida was the lead for a while, I think it was Friday's show. I want to say it was Friday's show this past week. We spoke about Chancellor Campbell as someone that was on commit watch. There it goes. Someone that was on commit watch, and he has committed. Who would have thought? But Chancellor Campbell, big time player. I understand. Again, I understand people saying the recruiting stuff, and I'm not even saying that Chancellor Campbell should be looked at as this, all SEC, all American caliber player. I'm not saying he should be looked at as the crown jewel of your offensive line class. I'm not saying any of that. But what I am saying is that I think he's a quality part of the class. Again, I don't care about the ranking, largely in part because of who he's got his offer sheet from, who he's got visits with. That's how I look at a player and I go, all right, that's value. Like that's quality there. Having an offensive lineman like Chancellor Campbell who can come in and was being recruited by schools that have done better at producing offensive tackles than Florida has. And Florida walks away from that battle successful. That's what I'm thinking about. That's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm watching. And I'm saying, yeah, damn good football player. And again, you watch the film, you're seeing someone with an insane ceiling. Speaking of watching the film and seeing someone that just, balls the hell out. Justin Williams also committed to the Florida Gators last night. We'll talk about that on Locked On Gators. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot, OKC choking Game 1 away. Yikes, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart, win big. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks for being Locked On Gators, your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free. We have us in the podcast and on YouTube. The other Florida Gators commit was Justin Williams, wide receiver, athlete, call him whatever you want to call him, as long as you include dynamic playmaker in there, because that's what he is. Also, later on, after this segment, we are going to have part of a recording with Brian Smith. The full thing is on the Portal podcast, which we aired late last night, talking about this recruitment weekend, and it's his opinion of these players as well. Justin Williams, just one of the most productive high school football players that you will ever see, because he did things that haven't happened before. Justin Williams committing to the Florida Gators was absolutely huge. And you look at the statistical production there, and in 2024, he had 1,473 receiving yards and 13 receiving touchdowns. Okay. 1,400 receiving yards, 13 touchdowns. Great. You look at his rushing stats, and he had 1,032 rushing yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, 1 kickoff return for a touchdown. And according to, I think it was Soderquist that tweeted it, or at least I'm pretty sure it was Soderquist that tweeted it. The first player in the state of Florida in high school to have more than 1,000 rushing and receiving, as in not just combined, obviously, but have both be a double 1,000-yarder in 1 year since Devin Hester did it. So pretty damn impressive. 5'11", 190, Justin Williams is going to be someone that I think can contribute early. And I don't mean, he's going to be a starter. And I mean, he's going to play a ton. But I do think he's someone that Florida can look at and say, hey, we can put him on the field early on, and we can use him how we used Trey Wilson as a freshman. because I think that's what he can do. I think he's a gadget guy early on. I think his route running needs a good bit of work, which isn't, again, my general thought for any high school player is technical refinement going to be needed. But if they've got the athletic traits where I can sell myself on that player and I can convince myself that that player is quality, works for me. And I think Justin Williams, you watch his film, has the dynamic playmaking traits and the dynamic playmaking ability to be a success at the next level. I think that you look at his statistical production, and some of that will translate over pretty fairly. Because again, not all production's created equal, right? But also a Gainesville kid, that easy selling point to get him to come to the University of Florida, which we didn't even talk about his ranking. 4-star receiver. He is a 4-star and on-3, 24/7 on ESPN, 3-star on Rivals, which is interesting, and I'll say why it's interesting in a second. On-3, he's the 150th overall player. On 24/7, he's 193rd. On ESPN, he's 272nd. On Rivals, not ranked nationally. But at receiver, on 3, he's 18th. 24/7, he's 14th. ESPN, he's 47th. And on Rivals, he's 17th, which, again, ironic that on 3 has him the highest nationally out of all the services. 24/7 has him as the highest receiver out of all the services. Obviously not that he's the number one, but that's where he fits positionally, is the earliest spot. And even though on 3 has him as the highest nationally and 18th receiver, Rivals has him unranked nationally, but 17th receiver. So it's just a mess there to begin with, just in terms of who fits where. But Justin Williams adds to this Florida Gators recruiting class, is a big time part of the class. And, again, someone that fits in right away as an early contributor. Special teams ability, had, I think, 1 return touchdown in 2024. But he's also on 3. He's the highest ranked commit in this Florida Gators class. He passes Caden Hall, who just last week passed Will Griffin. And the Florida Gators filling out this class. Again, this is a thing that we've talked about before. It's a thing we're going to keep talking about because it's the thing that needs to be continually talked about. This is not going to be an overnight thing for the Florida Gators recruiting class to climb. But, you added Chancellor Campbell yesterday, climbed 35th overall. You added Justin Williams yesterday and climbed from 35th to 22nd overall. Like, it's not going to be a thing that happens overnight, but you can chip away at these recruiting rankings and you can come up. And that's why last month we were like, yeah, there's 1 commit. You want it to be more, but it's not panic time because of that. So I do think Justin Williams slots in nicely. I think that he won't be the highest ranked Florida Gators receiver in this 2026 class. I think that we'll see them add another guy over them or over him. But I also think that he's going to be one of the guys you can look at and say, hey, he could probably play pretty early because his skill set translates. Like whether you're dynamic or sorry, let me rephrase that. If you're dynamic, you're dynamic. If you're dynamic in high school, you might be less dynamic in college, but you're still dynamic. Right. And by that, I mean, we've seen guys where it's like, oh, yeah, he's just faster than everybody else in high school. Then you get him in the SEC and it's like, oh, he's not. But I do think one thing that translates well with dynamic playmaking ability is your elusiveness and your ability to make people miss. Because that also gets harder. But if you've got the athletic traits and you've got the elusiveness, which I don't consider necessarily an athletic trait, I consider that a skill. When you've got the things that, again, can't be taught, but will translate, like the combination, it works. If we're talking about like we bring up height, weight, speed freaks. If you're tall and you're big, but you're not fast, you're not a height, weight, speed freak, right? You're just a big dude. If you're tall and you're fast, but you don't have the weight to really hang and bang, then you're just a tall stick, or you're just a fast stick. Like, that's it. So Justin Williams, I don't think he has, the height. He's not a height, weight, speed freak, but I do think he's someone that athletic profile wise, you can look at him and say, that guy should translate well to the SEC. Film wise, you look at him and you say that guy should translate well to the SEC. I think Justin Williams is a great take. I think he's someone that can play early, not be a starter, but play early, contribute in the slot from day one, contribute on special teams from day one, and be part of your rotation, be part of again, Florida has or Billy Napier has a proven tendency where if you're young and you're dynamic, he can get you on the field. If you're young and you can pick up a playbook, he can get you on the field. And Florida will be getting a guy like Justin Williams on the field. We're about to be joined by Brian Smith for what, again, was part of a recording that we did yesterday. And you can find the rest of it on the portal. So we're about to be joined by Brian Smith to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Gators.
Good day for Florida fans. Congrats on the pickups. They certainly needed some recruiting momentum, and they've done it. So they're at 7 commitments, I think, right now. Is that right? So
6, yeah. 6.
Okay.
Going to be 7 pretty soon. Don't worry about that.
Okay. Optimism from Brandon. That doesn't always happen. So take it when you can get it. First off, let's start off with Chancellor Campbell, offensive tackle out of Lakewood High School, St. Petersburg, Florida. I had a chance to see him at the Orlando Under Armour camp. He's just ginormous. 6'7", 6'8", somewhere in there. Still filling out his frame, but he's a kid that I think is going to weigh 325, and he kind of fits the profile of what you would expect for a Florida Gators offensive tackle playing in the SEC. Okay. Again, long way to go in terms of technique and all that stuff, but Ohio State wanted him, Penn State wanted him. He had offers from pretty much everybody in the state of Florida, down south. Were you surprised, A, that he committed, and B, any idea like where he was in the pecking order for Billy Napier and his staff?
Not sure where he was in the pecking order. I don't think he was a priority player, but I will say that he fits their mold of we'll take you as a developmental piece. I don't think he's, their crown jewel of the class. But I do think that he is their high upside swing there. But as far as the surprise about the commitment, nope. He was someone that I had listed on Friday. I said I'd be on commitment watch for him. I feel like Florida's been in the lead. And even after the commitment, he said, he felt like it was going to be Florida, but this official visit kind of solidified that for him. And so I don't think he was surprised by it. I wasn't surprised by it. I don't think anybody in the program was surprised by it. Big addition, and to see him cancel the visits afterward, which hopefully they stay canceled. But to see him cancel visits after at least feels good from a fan perspective.
Well, I know that Andrew Ivins from 24/7 is super high on his upside, and we've talked about this many times. Offensive tackle is hard to project. So the best thing you can do is get, as you said, a developmental player that's got all the physical tools, who is getting better. The difference between him as a sophomore and a junior is pretty stark, and he's a kid that's not done growing yet. His shoes, I'm guessing he wears a size 16 or something like that. He's got humongous feet, big hands. He's going to weigh 320 and be an offensive tackle in the SEC. So that's player number 1. Player number 2 was that was an in-state guy, but it's not anywhere near the closeness of the second recruit because he didn't even have to change towns. From Buchholz High School, Justin Williams, wide receiver. I think he'll play slot, but maybe he'll play out wide too. We'll see. Buchholz has always had football players that end up playing for the Gators for a very long time. They're a very competitive program. I'm guessing that the Gators thought they were getting him for a long time. To be honest, I'm a little bit surprised this didn't end sooner. Florida State, Indiana, Kentucky, and a whole bunch of other programs were trying to get him to visit. And he had a bunch of offers. But maybe the safest pick out of all the guys they've offered in state is the guy that lives literally 5 minutes from University of Florida.
Yeah, I think I don't know if this is what they're doing intentionally, but it does feel like they're even for kids that feel like heavy Florida leans, like Chancellor Campbell did, waiting for the OV, getting them on campus, getting them to pop then. And Billy's always been a momentum on the trail guy. I know that people will fault him. I'll fault him for having a kid say, hey, I want to commit today. And we'll hear, sometimes it's, let's wait till this moment. Let's wait till this thing happens. Let's wait till we can build momentum and build off those. But I think that might be part of it. Let's have a big Sunday with 2 commits. Let's wait for those. So I don't think it's much of a surprise for them. I do think that the timing is intentional. Also, and I don't know that for a fact, but I will say that I think the timing is intentional for when these kids commit.
I really like Justin's film because he has just ridiculous hands. I'm not going to try to compare him to a bunch of NFL guys, but anybody you can think of, that slot receiver who just makes the critical catch, Justin kind of fits that profile. Back shoulder fades. There was a couple of catches that like over the shoulder, one where he was falling down backwards because he kind of overran it, and then he just fell down catching the ball. Like, it's a very odd catch, and I'm like, holy cow, that is an NFL play. And then he has pretty good speed too, good off running through the screens and getting all the bouncing through the defenders, good balance. I think he can play pretty early. Yet Florida's not hurting for wide receiver talent right now, but I get the feeling that he's got a natural feel for the game. Like Chancellor Campbell, offensive tackle, takes a little longer to develop. If he got called on by his sophomore year to be a starter, I really don't think Justin Williams would be a problem for Florida. I think he would produce very well. The only issue he has is battling through a pretty good depth chart, to put it mildly. Have you heard anything in regards to Williams playing inside or out, or is it just get him on campus, we'll figure it out?
I think the priority is getting him on campus, but I expect him to be in the slot. I do expect him to be kind of a Trey Wilson role where we saw a whole bunch of sweeps and just getting him the ball in dynamic ways, especially earlier in his career with Florida. I would imagine that's a big plan there. But I think that, he's someone that Florida's going to look at him and just say, hey, let's get a dynamic playmaker. Billy's always any knock people want to have. Billy's always done a very good job of getting dynamic playmakers at receiver throughout really his entire career. And so this is just another extension of that. I do think Justin Williams is someone that they view as, let's use him in multiple ways. Let's have him as a return man. Let's use him in any way we can. 1,000 receiving yards last year, 1,400 receiving yards last year, 1,000 rushing yards. First guy to do that since Devin Hester in high school in the state of Florida. So, yeah, I think Florida's just like, hey, let's just get this kid on campus. Let's get him here. Let's just make some plays with him.
Well, I like his film, like I said, and I think he's a fit. And Florida should probably get the Buchholz kids more often than not. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about what's next for Florida. Is the perception changing?
Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free, wherever it's in the podcast and on YouTube. We will be back tomorrow. I mean, if there's another commit, we'll be back tonight. But we will be back at the absolute latest tomorrow to talk more Florida Gators. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all of my written work with New York Giants on SI, and I'll see you all next time.